Great. Welcome to our next segment. Now we want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and retail, and we have two very experts here. Gary Wotton from Wisplay. He's in his camper somewhere in northern England or so. Already our second speaker reporting live from his camper. That's 2020, I assume. Everything is different. And Josef Schneider from Pyramid Computers, live from HQ in Freiburg. Or are you in Freiburg? Good, fantastic. Good. Well, guys. COVID-19 has changed everything. Everything we believed in, everything we thought was right and worked, all the concepts, all design concepts, everything. Gary, you are from Wisplay, so you're an expert in retail solutions and retail systems, and you're also part of our Euroshop project we presented this morning. So the UK just reopened. You're 6, 7, 8 weeks later. So what have been your experiences and what have you seen?
Well, thanks for inviting me today. So yeah, the high street reopened in the UK around the 15th of June. Interestingly, not everybody did open on the high street when they were allowed to. There was noticeable absences from key retailers. But the good news was shoppers were out and they were spending. The objectives of my kind of visit when I dropped into London when retail opened was to experience retail firsthand, see if the customer journey had changed that much, and look at how relevant Wisplay was for the future and how we can help going forwards. Some retailers at the moment are more welcoming than others, let's say. We saw a lot of print-based communication, a lot of welcome back messages, guidance around the store, as well as like safety messages. But it was really interesting to see how many retailers were using staff and security personnel to manage entrances. And also then, obviously, lots of PPE. PPE was everywhere. Interestingly, good and bad. Some of the customer journeys just felt seamless and really well considered, but some journeys just felt terrible and really badly handled. I can easily talk about the best experiences, Lush Cosmetics and JD Sports. I'm not going to talk about the worst ones because it's not the right place to kind of call out some of these brands, but everything that I experienced since retail's been open, all the solutions in place feel very short term. It's almost everyone feels a little bit relaxed and this is just going to go away. But we're looking at solutions now to help people for the future because this kind of pandemic could happen again and we need to be ready to manage it. But actually how people have managed their retail stores at the moment, we've seen the best and the worst. And when I say short term, the print that was already being used was outdated. It was worn, it was dirty. Staffing and security costs are short term because this cost is just going to increase and increase and increase. When do you stop spending on security? And also, how are we going to fare once the weather changes? The really important thing is we're happy queuing outside at the moment, but shopping's got to change because we're not going to stand as consumers on the high street in winter, in the cold. We jump into shops in winter because we get that warm blast of air as we walk in and we feel comfortable. We can't be disgruntled and unhappy and scared to go to shops because it's cold. So I think the biggest challenges are still to come on the high street. And what's going to happen over the next kind of few months is going to be really, really interesting. But the good news was we're starting to hear some decent figures coming out of the UK now. July is our first month where the high street has been open for a full month. So I'll be really keen to sort of see what data comes out at the end of July, early August, to see have we recovered, have we bounced back, and are people back to shopping the way they used to? Because at the moment, I don't think they are. But it's all about trust going forward. And some retailers, I had trust in them to go and shop with. Others, I didn't. And that's going to be a challenge of design in the future. Mm-hmm. How do you build trust?
Gary, did you see big differences between premium retail and standard, like a Boots or like a food supermarket or so?
Interestingly, I looked at one pharmaceutical retailer and they were very normal. It was just a member of staff on the door. I was quite disappointed when I was only met with a table of bottled hand sanitizer, which, by the way, some are vile, some are great, but it just shows how considered that journey is. So the premium retailers were probably better off already because they're relying on a lower footfall. They already have security in place. So you walk along Bond Street and Regent Street and those staffing costs are already in place. So it felt natural in those stores, but I've got to admit, the likes of Topshop, Primark, Next, they handled it very, very well. And the stores felt very, very open and welcoming. So I think the challenge is some people rely on footfall, some don't. So how's that going to balance? Because at the moment, we know footfall is down.
Good. Josef, I mean, you're designing, you're selling kiosk systems, self-service terminals for QSR, for quick service restaurants, but also for other locations. What is the feedback of your customers, and where do you see increased interest in the new vertical markets? Are people still using touch, or do they fear using touch? So what is your experience in the past weeks and months?
So in general, we don't see a loss in the use of touch. So let's make it not that general, but what we see is, like Gary pointed out, that there are a lot of vapor solutions and a lot of things out there which look like patches, so nothing really fundamental. And most of the successful implementations that we have now due to COVID were things where industries or players were forced by governmental regulations to do certain processes which were so costly to implement in a manual way or would take much too long, like self-identification outside of festivals or of clubs, where you really have to match the ticket to the identity of the person, and you have to have it documented for governmental files. If you would do that manually, the cost is just too high to justify it. So you need to automate. So therefore, in general, you could say no matter if it's kiosk or if it's digital signage, whatever, the efficiency has to be there, the efficiency to reduce costs. The only thing that we have with those new customer journeys is that you have a different ROI on certain lines. Before, because you never had a queuing line, it was not necessary. You could never calculate ROI to put in a self-service solution there, because you maybe once a week had a queuing line, and then you didn't care if it rained or if it didn't rain. But now you have it daily, so it's something you can calculate very quickly your ROI. And then coming back, so we see a big increase in kiosk usage, even though everybody's talking about contactless. There's still kiosk, of course, is good. I mean, you have your hand, you have one finger where you touch. If you disinfect the finger and if you don't lick the display, which you shouldn't do anyway, then that's not an issue. But we also see digital signage. We see in general the convergence in those interaction possibilities to get customer interacted, to say, now I have the queuing line. How do I interact with those people queuing there? And not every retailer will have their own app which they can use. Yeah. Because people don't want to have 1,000 apps on their phones. Yeah.
Quite interesting. We presented in our keynote this morning, we presented some details, some market research. And one study says 86% of the people want less interaction with sales staff in the future, which is unbelievable, bad news for physical retail. But the question is, but on the other hand, the majority of them want more digital touch points because they need guided selling, they need some advice, but they're afraid, they're missing the confidence. So the question is, how can we change that? Or how can we, support them?
And I mean, that's a great example to say less personal contact. And if you take McDonald's, who was the trailblazer in kind of putting self-service in place there, I mean, who liked to talk to a McDonald's employee to order? Who really was like to go to this cyborg who was like having this headset and who was under pressure because there was this huge line, who never gave you the choice and say, you can have guacamole with this and you can have this. They never did that. So you really didn't like the experience. And you have that with many retailers today. So having a self-order display and the possibility to really control the journey in a much better way and enhance this part of the journey, but then have maybe a very friendly staff bring your package or interact in a later stage. So really use your labor, same as McDonald's did, to have the people bring out the food and have still the smile, have still the physical interaction. So taking out the things which were in a kind of worthless and you didn't want to have anyway. I mean, who likes to look for somebody in a store to ask about a shirt when you know first they don't have the inventory right, so they don't even know what they have on stock. She doesn't know your size, or he doesn't know, they don't know your size. They have no clue about the brand, so it doesn't make sense. Yeah?
We are almost running out of time. Just a short question for Gary. Do you think digital can be integrated into the customer journey at a sneaker store, for example, or so? Because that's where you still need, some support of a sales associate.
100%. I think one of the biggest and challenging trends that we've got coming up is it's getting the connection between online and offline closer. I mean, there's some good stories out there at the moment where footfall's down, conversion is high, and some retailers and some sneaker brands that we know are hitting target. So that shows straight away that people want to go into store, but they must be doing all their research digitally and doing it online now. So the research is done, but they're still going into shops. Now, why are they? Is there still convenience with shopping? Is it a pastime, which in the UK it definitely is, but digital is going to be so important going forward. It's really interesting to hear that less people want to interact with staff. I think we do so much research, and the way the world has changed so quickly, everyone has become digitally native. Digital is just going to be so important within that customer journey. So I want to see how people are going to handle this going forward, especially as we get into this Christmas trading period where people need to know what they're going out to buy for because they want to nip in and out. We may be booking appointments to go into large retailers, or we book a time slot.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, time is running out. Thanks a lot, Gary. Thanks a lot, Joseph, for your input. Very, very interesting. Until Christmas is still a few more months to go. Currently, we're more on vacation. We're sweating here, so let's enjoy the summer, and hopefully, COVID-19, doesn't come back as soon as it currently looks like. Thanks a lot for both of you, and speak to you soon, hopefully on the real stage again in the future. Thank you.